Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. Most any deer hunter I know has also experienced the same type of heartache and anxiety of a shot deer that didn't fall within sight like this young man. In the past, if a deer hunter wanted to up the odds of recovering a deer that didn't immediately fall, well, the only two advantages they had was to either wait a long time before looking for it or exercise a lot of patience when doing so. But thanks to a new regulation in 2017, deer hunters have a new advantage at their disposal. The use of tracking dogs was legalized, and with it came the birth of a whole network of independent operators and their tracking dogs. They call themselves the Oklahoma Blood Trackers.
Some of the conversation came up a few years ago. They talked about their desire. Some of the guys in the state had wanted to use dogs to track different kinds of dogs. But the way our laws were written, it was against the law to use a dog to hunt deer of any kind. That law was written for dogs that run deer, but the tracking dogs were included in that just by a blanket coverage. We went to addressing those and tried to change some of the rules where we could write in that you could use the tracking dogs without creating loopholes where they could run dogs if we didn't write them correctly. That is where some of the rules came from on the leash, keeping the dogs on the leash, notifying the warden before you go, some of the things like that.
All of us with the Oklahoma Blood Trackers Association are really, really proud of how we've been able to partner with the Department of Wildlife on their controlled management hunts, supplying trackers on those hunts, also helping the game wardens with their harvest data, and it's a resource that's not just available to hunters in the state, but the Department of Wildlife as well, and we're really very pleased with the opportunity that we have here in the state now.
Our rules take about a year, as you know, the whole process, and we were in the process of trying to look at some of the rules when some of the local dog owners came to us with the idea and wanting to make it legal. Some of the wardens in the state allowed this on a case-by-case basis beforehand, and we wanted to make it where it was legal for everyone to do it if they wanted to. We went to work on it together because some of the things that I knew in getting the rules ready was just what I'd read. But it was definitely a group effort. We worked on it together as it went along.
There's no stereotypical tracker. We all do this as a hobby on the side. We all have families and lives and jobs, but this is something, a passion of ours we love doing. Plus our dogs love to work, and most of them, when you receive a call from a hunter that's in need of a tracker, like my dog, for example, he'll jump over on the couch and he'll listen to it as if he's saying, okay, he's listening to the hunter and what he's saying. And then as soon as I grab my boots and my bag, he is out the door before I am. So these dogs enjoy doing the tracking, and it's a fun thing to do, but there's no typical tracking team. My husband and I track, and he has what he calls a tracker caddy, where he drops the toilet paper behind us and helps form the line while Brutus and I are forging ahead following where the deer went. And then there's other people that have, it's just them and their dog. There's anything from a retired man down to a school-age boy that does it after school.
It's one of the few things that we've presented new rules. I haven't seen any problems. You know, there hasn't been, when you change one rule, you often create two problems, and I haven't seen a problem. So I don't see a lot of changes in the future.
Trackers absolutely are a family network. You absolutely have to be that way because every track is different and you can learn from each track.
Well, if it gets to that point where you decide you need help and you want to have a dog come out and help you, the best thing you do is document what you've done so far. Put something at the hit site and then something with the last blood or the blood that you've been able to mark. Back out, contact the tracker, go to the Facebook page or the website, get on the Find a Tracker map. Hopefully you've already contacted a tracker, but if you haven't, contact your local tracker. Get a game plan with them on how they want to proceed with the track, what they need to do to handle it. If you go to our Find a Tracker map, which you can get on our Facebook group page, which is the best way since it does change throughout the season, or the website, it has the tracker's name, location, and their contact information.
Soon after the new regulations allowing the use of tracking dogs, an international organization, the United Blood Trackers, hosted their annual conference right here in Oklahoma. It's called TrackFest, and it brought in trackers from all over the country.
I like that. I'm currently the Director of Testing. I run the testing program for United Blood Trackers for the last couple of years, but I was the original president, and I was the president for the first 10 years. It's a national organization. We also have a few international members in Europe, and we have quite a few people from Canada, from the provinces in Canada that are involved. It's basically our annual national convention, and the purpose is to we try to move it around from state to state to state, location to location, to generate local interest in that state, to build up the tracking activity in that state. One of our mission statements as an organization is to promote the legalization and use of the tracking dogs. It's also then, of course, a really great source, really the best source. Some of the best trackers in the country are always at TrackFest, and if you're going to go to one place and get the most information in the shortest amount of time, it's TrackFest.
Having the TrackFest here in Oklahoma was a huge deal. You have a world of knowledge within the United Blood Trackers. There's people within that organization that have tracked for 30 plus years. So the information level was just next to none. It was the best thing in the world to be able to talk to trackers that have tracked for that long.
One of the favorite learning activities each year at TrackFest is called a walk in the woods. Instructors set up along a hiking trail numerous mock deer site hit locations.
When I chase like the deer, I make sure.
In small groups, participants would rotate through the stations. Participants use clues and sign at the site to determine how the deer was hit, the direction of travel, and formulate a plan to recover the deer with their dogs. Each station is a totally different scenario and designed to really put the trackers to the test.
By the walk in the woods exercise of the seminar, what we're trying to illustrate is the sign that you might find on the ground when you show up to track. A lot of times you can read the sign to tell what's going on with the deer, to understand if you need to continue to track or if you need to wait for a while. It gives you some indication as to what you need to do going forward. Hey guys and girls, when I got here, my hunters had flagged the deer trail for me. All they knew was that the deer was standing broadside when they shot, and he ran off, and then for 100 yards or so they didn't find any indication, and then they started finding these blood spots. I wanted y'all to step up here and give it a quick look and see what you think you can tell by this blood. There's a place right here. If y'all could come around and look at this and tell me what you see.
I think he laid down there.
You think he laid down there? What makes you think he laid down?
It's all smeared out.
It's all smeared out. I agree with you. I really think that's a bed where he was walking and stopping and walking and stopping, and then he came over here and laid down. And there's a good indication if he's walking and stopping and then he laid down, my hunters probably came in a little too fast and jumped him out of this bed. If he was mortally hit and we waited the amount of time we should have waited, by the way he was hit, he probably would have been dead here and we'd have found him. At this point, we probably ought to back out and give it a little while and then come back later with the dogs and see if he hasn't bedded up somewhere else and expired.
We're at the hit site demonstration. This is part of the TrackFest workshop where we actually hang a roadkill deer. We find a deer, freeze it, unthaw it, hang it in a lifelike position, and then shoot it in various places. And by using clean black plastic each time, we can tell exactly what that hit on that deer looks like. So we go up and we look for bone fragment, hair, blood, just anything we can identify to help us know where this deer was hit. And once we know that, then we can develop a plan of when this deer should be tracked, when we can go look for it, and hopefully it will be dead by that time. So that's what we're doing, is inspecting and looking for sign. And this is a great way because it's not lost in the grass or anything. You actually see everything that comes out. Like on this was a rear leg shot. And that's what they're examining now. This particular demonstration probably isn't done 2 or 3 times a year in the whole country. So to actually have it here in Oklahoma and have this opportunity is a big thing for tracking, and with tracking being new in Oklahoma, and we got people that are going to learn a ton of things today. So we're excited about that.
At this time, Oklahoma doesn't require the tracking dogs be certified, but the United Blood Trackers does provide a testing or evaluation opportunity each year at TrackFest. The tests are the culmination of a lot of time the handler has spent working with their dog and learning to read the dog's reactions. Testers will lay down a random mock blood trail by dragging a piece of deer hide through the woods and periodically leave other natural scents and actual deer blood along the way. Finding a piece of hide used to make the mock trail is the ultimate goal of the test and the dog's reward. The level of difficulty are based on the amount of time that has passed since the mock trail was made and the amount of scent laid down and the distance of the trail.
We actually test dogs to different levels of difficulty. We call it our UBT1, our UBT2, and UBT3 evaluation tests. It's set up so that a dog, our UBT1, a basic level that really any dog that's going out into the field and trying to find a deer should be able to do. It's pretty easy. It's not a long trail, it's 400 yards long, it's not very old, a couple hours old, 3-4 hours old at most, minimum of 2 hours. And there's quite a bit of scent put down, whether it's put down with tracking shoes or blood or both. But basically it's saying a dog that takes that and passes that test, it's saying that dog has a really good start. Then the second test, the second level is a more advanced dog that the trails are at least 8 hours old, but in practice they're almost always overnight because it's too hard to set a whole bunch of tests up first thing in the morning, then do those in the afternoon. So typically they're almost always about 20 hours old, which is now getting to be real life. Real life. A dog that can, and it's 1,000 yards long, and there's a more realistic amount of scent put out, very similar to what you'd have in the real world. A dog that can pass that dog can find a lot of deer. That dog can be called in, the day after a deer's been shot, and the deer's, if it's kind of like a marathon. If a deer can go 800 yards, it can go, 1,600 yards or 2,400 yards, So that's more real. And just a few years ago, we started a third level, which is really kind of a fun level and a big challenge that you don't really know what's going to happen. There's all kinds of crazy things, and the test I set up the other day, it must have had 20 turns because it was in thick stuff all over the place. There was a big distraction of a blind, a tent blind that was laying in the woods blowing in this 40-mile-an-hour wind, and the blood went right by. The dog almost had a heart attack when that thing went flopping around. But can the dog recover from that? And I ended that test with the track going across a parking lot at the one fishing pond, and actually put the skin in the pond. And so that the dog gets there, and that test is not only for the dog, but a big part of that test is for the handler to be able to manage those problems and figure things out. When the dog gets to the pond and can't find where to go, does the handler smart enough to think about, well, maybe that deer went in the water?
Simulated wound bed, they put hair in here to simulate where the deer's laid down, where he's been wounded, and then he's got went on down the trail, so the dog's going on down the trail, hopefully to find him.
None of our tests are scored on a score, they're pass or fail. The criteria is, for the judge, would you call that dog to look for your friend's deer? And at the end of that test, and if you say, yeah, that dog, I wouldn't be afraid to recommend that dog to my friend, it's a pass. And if you go, I don't know, that don't look like that dog would have made it, a lot of deer get away from that dog, then it's a fail.
Everyone that doesn't realize that he passed.
Yeah, good job.
Woo! That was a tough track. With the wind.
There is scent. That was awesome.
There is scent.
Okay. At the end of this indoor part of it, I have a stack of papers up here. You can come up and get it on your own. There's one sheet that I forgot to get in the booklet. It's a kind of a summary of determining wound location, and you want to add it to your booklet. Then we have presentations on training of young dogs like we just had here. We have presentations on different cultures of training from the southern United States to the northern United States. Or is it on the leash tracking, off the leash tracking, and we have presentations on some, just really as a point of interest, on international tracking. We had someone here this weekend from Luxembourg with teaching the European method of tracking.
Well, yeah, I say a lot of people do ask me, how do you get a tracking dog? And you might actually have one in your house right now, because that's what happened to us. we just had a family pet, and just along the way, he showed us that he wanted to sniff everything, so we decided to try him one day at deer. And the first time we shot a doe, we brought him out and we put him on the hit site, and he went right to it. Granted, it was only about 50 yards away, the typical, shot, and then you see the deer drop, but that's basically the way you start with a dog if you want to check their aptitude. Is the best time is during hunting season too. And then we just progress it from there, and the tracks get harder, the lines get longer, and you train them off season. Just get with your local trackers and they will help you. They will be more than willing to help guide you with training your dog, giving you instructions on how to lay bloodlines, the off-season training, and more importantly, most of us will even allow you to come on a track with us to see what it's like in real life. And that right there will help you leaps and bounds learn how to become a tracker, because there's a lot of variables in there. There's a lot of grid search tracks you need to get out of. There's a lot of knowing how deer react in the woods. But being a hunter and tracking, that's like those two things combined are the best things you can be.
A question we get asked a lot is, what's this going to cost? And that really just kind of depends. It's like a plane ticket. It just depends on when and where. You may be 5 minutes from that tracker, you may be an hour and a half away. It may be midnight or noon on a Saturday. It all just depends. But to call a tracker is free. The best thing to do is to contact that tracker even beforehand, get kind of a game plan set up, like, if I get an animal that I want tracked, what would it cost me? How do I handle it? That's really the best way to do. But we're all very open and very forthcoming on any costs that we would want to come track. What a hunter can do to give themselves the best chance at recovering that animal is to not let too much time and to not disturb that scene. Once it gets to the point you realize this is not going to be a typical track, back out, call a tracking team, really document it, because it's only making it harder on a dog if you walk through there and spend hours and let a whole bunch of time go by. On an undisturbed fresh track, a dog's almost 100%, and the odds just really go down for all the disturbance, all the grid searching, fanning out, and then the amount of time that goes by just makes it tougher and tougher on a dog. It's not impossible, but it certainly makes it a lot more difficult. We refer to ourselves as blood trackers, but that's kind of just a euphemism, because the dogs, while they do smell blood, they track the entire part of the animal, the skin, the hair, the hoof print, and when you walk through that area, you rub against that scent particles, and when you spread out looking for it, you spread that scent around. That really confuses the dog, because the dog just knows what he smells. He doesn't know the difference between the actual deer that put that smell on the ground or the hunter that picked that scent up and drug it around the woods. And so the dog just has to work much, much harder to try to eliminate that and sort that out. A lot of people ask us how our dog knows that it's following the right deer, and each deer has its own individual scent that's unique to it through a gland, the interdigital gland in their hoof that they emit. And that gland can change not only for individual, but also during the stress and condition of that animal. And our dogs typically key in on not only that individual deer, but also the fear scent that it kind of emits from its hoof. And that's how it's able to sort out the one deer it's looking for from the whole herd of deer. Well, tracking's still very new here in Oklahoma, and a lot of people are still trying to figure out how it works. And one of the best things that a hunter can do for a tracker that's near them is to let them run some training lines, some practice tracks. And if they get a deer that's going to be pretty easily recovered, a pretty good shot that may have just went 50, 60 yards, people will think we'd have no need for a tracker. But those are actually some of the best tracks to contact a tracker with, especially the ones that are developing a dog. And with it being new, there's a lot of teams that are developing that would just absolutely love to get tracks like that. And so we encourage everyone to reach out to their tracker to see if that's even an option that they want. And there's really no better way to get in a tracker's good graces than to have a relationship like that with them.
The wildlife department has several different things that we do to assist people, but obviously if they harvest an animal and recover it, they're a lot better off than if they harvest an animal and don't recover it. I don't know how often that happens, but they're a lot happier customer, and we get what we need. We count that animal in the bag limit, and we get it counted as a season harvest.
This is my hobby, and it's fun, and I think it's a win for everybody. We don't waste the animal resource, we go find it. The hunter, instead of wounding a deer and losing it, he tags that deer, he doesn't go shoot another one. It's a win for conservation, it's a win for the hunter, and then the people like us that track, because that's what we like to do. So we train our dogs and we go help people find their deer, and it's more fun than you can imagine.
There's just no downside to it. There's just no downside to it.
I haven't heard anything but good things about it. They're not always successful, but everybody that's had anything to do with them just loves them, and they are I don't know their success rate as far as quoting it, but I know there's a lot of happy people out there that have found their deer because one of these guys or girls have came along to help them.
I am looking forward to the day, though, when our mission statement no longer says legalize get all the states legal, because we're getting close. There's only about 7 or 8 left that aren't legal.
Look. Get him? One, a little horn and a big horn.
Yeah. Good job. High five. Good job. You want to drag him back to the truck?
You.
I get to.
Well, I want somebody to both.
You want some help? Well, I'll get the big one, you get the little one.
No.
No, you get the big one?
Hey.
He's helping. Are you ready?
Big, that's his reward, man.
Yep, that's his reward. All right.
He's a very big deer.
The dog's helping us. Almost there. We get the land.
Yeah, we like to help anyone we can when we track, but something like this is a little more special than the average one. When you get to see a young kid with his first deer, it doesn't get much better than that as far as like a tracker.
Although deer tracks are their most common type of work, most all tracking dogs can be used for other types of big game like elk and antelope, even bear and feral hogs. We sure hope that you'll take advantage of this new resource available to hunters, whether it's to help you find your own animal or maybe to get some advice on getting your own dog into tracking. We'd also like to remind you that if you aren't already following us on social media, to join the hundreds of thousands of sportsmen that are already engaged with us every day in our conservation conversation. Hey, thanks for joining us today. And for all of us at your Wildlife Department, I'm Todd Craighead, and we'll see you right back here next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.